the problem that we see too often is dependency. Things are too dependent on principal or the practice owner. People don't want to put the work in. As a result of that, we say good people are not found. Great people are built. If you can lead yourself exceptionally well, people are actually going to just mirror what it is that you do. I think getting really, really clear on some of the characteristics, so one of the characteristics that we really evolve internally for us is everybody has an amazing relationship with feedback. High performers are obviously looking at achieving more. They don't really just want to hit the standard. The unique DNA is they just want what's next, what's next, what's next.
Good is the enemy of great. If you want to have a great practice, then you need to learn how to nurture high performance. And that's what we're doing inside today's episode. Let's get stuck in. Dave, welcome to the podcast. Super excited. So today we're talking about how to nurture high performance. It's kind of a big deal.
It is a big deal. And firstly, delighted to be here.
Big deal.
Yeah, delighted to be here.
I'm delighted that you're here. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. But yeah, I'm really excited about this topic. It comes up a lot, Tristan.
100%.
And so I'm really looking forward to deep diving into it today and offering obviously some of the secret ingredients to making sure that we nurture high performance.
Magnificent. So for everyone watching and listening, Dave is our general manager here at Practice Acceleration. He's also our head of coaching. So he hears everything that's going on. Like right now, we've got 452 members inside our program. Growing every single day. And might be more by the time we finish this podcast.
And we're now in 7 countries, the 7th one over in Denmark.
Wow, that's right. Yes, absolutely. Mads has joined us over from Denmark. What I'm trying to get to is that there's a lot of context for why high performance is kind of a big deal. So when we think about growing a practice, you and I were talking before and saying it's about scaling up the performance before we scale up the number of performers.
Yeah.
So what happens if we don't learn how to nurture high performance? What happens? Why is this a big deal? Yeah, and we'll get into the fix as well shortly, but why is it a big deal?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think the first point is, scale up the performers. If you go to that first without scaling up the performance, Tristan, all it does is just going to amplify what's currently already happening. Yeah. So if things are not going too well, firstly, the first thing's going to happen is we're just going to amplify things not happening too well.
Right. So I'm hearing that right. Like if you've got a practice and things aren't going the way that you want, and then you bring more people into that environment, what happens?
It's only going to amplify the situation. So first and foremost, I think that the problem that we see too often is dependency. So things are too dependent on the principal or the practice owner. Yeah. So if you just go about, first of all, thinking that hiring or bringing more people into that environment is going to be the solution to everything, if anything, you're just going to have more dependency on you.
Gotcha.
And the reason being is, one of the things that we see a lot is just think about energy, time frame. It's essentially, you're just, many of our listeners might be parents themselves.
Yeah.
But if not,
there's a lot of parents that listen.
Yes. So in that case, then there's going to be an opportunity where they're just going to be parenting their own staff.
Right. Gotcha.
What I mean by that is,
and they're busy enough parenting their own children.
Yes, if that's the case, and if they're not parents, well, it's going to give them an insight into it.
Yeah.
What I mean is the decisions. So if you think about the energy and the time it takes, and obviously to treat and just to run the business, but then you have a team or staff that then you're having to think for them. You're having to decide for them. You're having to
parent.
Essentially having to direct and clean up after them, so to speak.
Yes.
So, imagine that if you don't have a culture of high performance already where people can think, act, behave, decide on your behalf,
yes,
then things are just going to be a lot more dependent on you. And if you imagine just throwing a whole bunch of wave people on top of that, well, that's just going to amplify.
Yeah, you're going to scale up chaos, right?
Correct.
So, but when our clients obviously come to us, they want to grow their businesses, and they want to take their business beyond themselves. Essentially, they want to be able to get the 3 freedoms: freedom of money, freedom of time, freedom of headspace, and also freedom of relationship to work with the right people.
Right.
Both with choosing the right patients to work with, the right staff to work with, and so on. So when we solve this, when we actually introduce a high performance culture, what's the benefit? Like, what have you seen within our program, and just with our clients that adopt this? What do they transcend? What do they experience on the other side of this breakthrough?
Yeah, well, I think what you said there, I think it's a really good point, which is, what was the whole purpose we get into business in the first place? Well, more time, more money, more freedom.
Yeah.
And if they don't quite get that right, well, not only are going to give you more time, more freedom, and more headspace, it's going to give you the opposite. It's going to give you less time,
yes,
less money, because it's going to be eaten up, and also probably even a headspace where you're consumed, thinking about it all the time.
More stress.
Absolutely. So what people see on the other side is if they get this right and they bring people in, well, first of all, if you think about those three, let's think about time factor. Well, it's redirected of time. What we find is a lot of our members or people who have started to experience this are starting to devote time where they value it the most.
Yes,
They spend time in what we call their genius space.
Yes.
Where they get to, having the right people. Well, first of all, you got to have, where's the bus or where's the vehicle actually going? But then it's about having the right people in the right seat, doing the right things at the right time.
Oh, I love that.
And
this is why you're in charge, Dave.
Well, that's it. It's all having all the right things.
Yes.
And as a result of having that, well, what tends to happen is that people spend the right time doing the right things that kind of light them up, so to speak. And for each people, every person, and even for people listening today, that's all going to be different. And there's going to be certain things that are going to be the same and things that are going to be different.
That's right.
Yeah.
Like my favorite thing to do is like hanging out and talking with you right now.
Yeah.
And like I try to shape my days. I've got at least 2 days a week so I've got you, Dave, here, and I've got another Dave in my life, which is Dave on the other side of the camera. Dave, I appreciate you, and I appreciate you, Lena. So I hang out with Dave and Lena at least twice a week, and we're just shooting content like this because this lights me up. And this is how I elevate high performance inside my team and getting into my genius spaces and talking about how we can help practice owners, right?
Yep.
So it's going to be different for each of you. What lights you up is different to what lights me up. It's really important we have the right people in the right seat rowing in the same direction. So in terms of nurturing high performance, a point that I'd like to make, and I know that this mistake happens a lot with our clients, is do you notice this as well? Because this is something that I believe is happening in the market, is everyone wants to hire, everyone wants to scale up. Scale is a real buzzword, and everyone's looking for this so-called A player, this unicorn, and they're almost looking for this person to come pre-packaged. Like we advertise, they come in, and it's like, hey, that's my A player, they're going to come and save me. To me, that doesn't seem to be reality. Can you speak to that point?
Yeah, well, it's kind of like the finished articles that people don't want to put the work in, and as a result of that, it's simply because either we say good people are not found, great people are built.
That's right. I love that.
And that requires, again, putting the energy and having the right framework in play in order to do that in the first place. So, I think that by trying to go out and just find the right people, again, it's putting energy and time into the wrong space. It's first of all being very, very clear on, well, what is it that we stand for? That you and I have, we speak about certain mantras.
Yes.
And then some of those mantras, come out, and as a result, we attract people to us that share those mantras.
That's
and
right.
put in the work.
That's right.
High performers only ever stay high performers because they never not do the basics.
I love that.
And
it's one of my favorites.
So when someone comes into your world, whether that be, from in a working environment, since the context that we're speaking about here today, well, it's about being really, really clear on the basics. What's that old, true saying from Bruce Lee used to say it, never fear the man who can do 10,000 different kicks.
Yes.
Fear the man who can do one kick 10,000 times.
Yes.
Or because they've just mastered something really, really good. And what I really like about that is when people come into your world, it's getting really, really clear on what are all the basics of marketing, basics of retention, basics of patient experience, basics of how they operate on a day-to-day basis in terms of their schedule, and by doing that exceptionally well. And as a result of that, we can speak about, everybody wants, Tristan, the luxury, right? Which is, of course. If you think about, a finished article, a hard performer being like a penthouse.
Yeah.
Well, all penthouse, even the most bespoke penthouses are built on strong foundations.
That's right. Exactly.
So it's about, first and foremost, it's about getting the foundations really, really right.
I think another good analogy, if we think about bringing in a high performer into our team, is we think about, I love to use the relationship analogies. You hear them using in our team meetings all the time. And the reason I do them is because I think we can all relate to a romantic relationship analogy. And let's say that you're single, or you've just come out of a relationship, and you're looking for someone else to light you up and to fulfill your life. And I've got a lot of friends that are single. I'm 43, almost 44 at the time of watching this recording, and I've got a lot of friends that are single, and what they keep saying to me is, and they're unsuccessful in finding that romantic partner. I'm no expert in this area, by the way, but I do like to talk about it as if I am one. So, I continually see that they're not finding this partner they want to be with and whatnot. And they're like, oh, that is not out there. This person isn't out there. And my advice, which I'm extremely unqualified to say to my friends, is this: be the person that you want to be with wants to be with.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing relates to practice. It's like we're not going to find this unicorn high performer until we are worthy of them coming into our life. And I don't mean through like some weird law of attraction thing. What I do mean is if you want a high performer in your life, you need to be a high performer yourself, and you need to be able to nurture that environment.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, like the greatest talent will collapse and fail in the absence of the most engaged leader. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think even there's a dilution effect, isn't it? Where we speak quite a lot about this internally even with our own team.
Yes.
Which is, people are only ever going to do a start 70% of what you do.
That's right.
And how you show up and what you say and how whatever it may be, and probably even more so that even for anyone that's listening now, if you were to take a self-check, it's like, well, how are you showing up right now? And if people were to take even 50% of that, as a result of that, are they going to be able to get away with it? Are they going to be able to perform? And so first and foremost, even is it Maxwell says itself, there's five stages of leadership, but the very first stage of leadership is you got to lead yourself.
Absolutely.
And if you're showing up to that point where if you can lead yourself exceptionally well, people are actually going to just mirror what it is that you do.
Absolutely. So if we're thinking about like an environment that nurtures high performance, there are 3 C's that you and I talk about. Why don't we just go like top to toe down and cover those 3 briefly? And if one of them jumps out to us, we might elaborate on that more. But if we're thinking about nurturing a culture of high performance, firstly, I want to say, I think the biggest mistake that we see with culture is a great culture isn't necessarily where everyone just gets along and everyone's friends. Because that's like, you're in the friend zone, right? Like, you get along, but like, I've got lots of wonderful friends and I wouldn't work with any of them, but I love hanging out with them as friends, right? So a great culture is not a culture which is devoid of conflict. And in fact, I think that conflict is very healthy in a high performance team. It's actually the acknowledgement that there will be conflict and how you resolve that, right? So if we're looking at like creating a culture of high performance, what would be the first C? If we've got 3 C's, what's the first C? Yeah,
well, firstly, when it comes to, C being culture, it's even thinking...
First one is culture.
Yeah, but
3 C's of building high... But
it's interesting we go because there's more C's that come out, Tristan.
That's right.
To build culture, I think you spoke to yourself there was about leading yourself. Well, first of all, you got to think about character of self, but then what kind of characteristics of people do you want to have around you? So things in here would be, being really, really clear on, what do we value? And because, one of the DNAs behind every team is the actions we take, the decisions we make, and the conversations that we have. There's another C.
Oh, another one.
But the conversations we have with each other and with our patients and with our and with the people that we interact with. So the decisions we make, the actions we take, and the conversation we have are all going to be based around those characteristics and those common values. It's kind of like an underpinning DNA.
Yes.
So if you want to have the right culture of high performance, you have to be really, really, here's another C, you have to be really, really clear.
And congruent.
And
consistent.
Love it. That's all the C's. I think people can write all these down. But yeah, I think one of the key aspects to driving a really fast culture is being really, really clear and having clarity around what kind of characteristics do people show up on a day-to-day basis. And in other words, that will define...
And that's the culture.
Absolutely. That will define the actions, the decisions, and the conversations we have. That is probably the macro level. If you think about, even for those listening, well, what actions and decisions and conversations are your team having that you're happy with, but then what are you not happy with? Well, it probably comes down to not really defined. The other thing you spoke which I want to address is, embracing conflict.
Yeah.
When people not unsure about an action, decision, or a conversation that you're not necessarily happy with, well, I think it comes down to, the relationship with feedback.
Yes.
And we speak about this quite a bit, that, having fast feedback, there's no failure.
Yeah.
There's only feedback.
That's right.
Meaning that, in the past, I'll give you an example of some, people that we interact with or some of the members that we work with, is that without kind of naming names with any person, but what tends to happen is there's been an example where I've worked with one of our clients where they gave feedback to one of their team members. And as a result of that, team member maybe didn't quite like or didn't have a good relationship with feedback, therefore went in the doldrums. They got a bit sooky.
They retracted.
Yeah, they retracted. They went a bit sooky. They kind of went internal. And obviously this conversation was had on a Monday. And as a result of that, that person only finally came out and kind of agreed or dealt with this by the Friday.
Yeah,
now,
wow.
What impact is that having when that person is
there's like 4 days of the practice owner and the team putting up with this negative relationship with feedback from that one person.
It's a bit immature. The person's maybe personalized it.
Yes.
Thought that the business owner or the owner at the time was speaking at them, and they took it really, really personally. But in fact, it was for the intention of. And here's another great thing we talk a lot about. It's about in order to overcome that person so that it happens in the future. What they had to speak about was, guys, we're having a culture of effective feedback, meaning that when we have our relationship with feedback has to improve. And as a result of that, it's the intention of why am I giving the feedback in the first place? Well, the feedback is there in order to make sure that we all rise, we all grow, that as a result of that, we can learn from it, we improve, but it's bridging the gap between the intention of what that feedback is initially given and the interpretation of how that person actually receives it.
Yes.
So I think that's, at the end of the day, I think getting really, really clear on some of the characteristics. So one of the characteristics that we really evolve internally for us is that everybody has an amazing relationship with feedback.
Yes.
And that feedback's met with gratitude. So even if that feedback is fast
and needs to be delivered with empathy, I think.
Yeah.
In order for it to be received well, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So if I'm hearing this right, like in order to nurture high performance, we need to have the right culture in place.
Yes.
Where we can we can confidently and calmly, there's another C, confidently address conflict in a healthy way, and then have a really strong relationship with how we actually action the feedback. And that is one thing we do look for. We look for the characteristic of someone that's going to have a good relationship with feedback. And so if we're working with someone, as a listener, you might have a different approach to this, but we always have a 90-day process with a new team member of where we're really establishing, do we want to keep working with this person from both perspectives? And we're looking at these characteristics of relationship with feedback, right? So when someone has a good relationship with feedback, we know that culturally that they'll likely be a better fit for us.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's the first C, which I think I really appreciate you unpacking that so much. The second C to really nurture an environment of high performance is compensation.
Yep.
And we don't need to get into the nitty-gritty of this too much because, like Dave just said, we're working with 452 clients inside our coaching program right now and growing across 7 different nations, across every different niche in healthcare that exists, basically. So we're seeing that goes to say we see a lot of different types of practices, different types of people, different types of business models. So how you compensate is going to be very different to the way we compensate and the way that potentially each of our clients compensates. But what is really important, I feel, with a high performer is that there is a goal in place and that there's a meaning attached to. A high performer wants to earn a level of income so they can achieve a lifestyle that they can aspire to. What are a couple of tips that we could share with our viewers and our listeners around the second C, which is compensation? Yeah,
so I think that, cream rises to the top, and it's all about what's the incentives in order to get there. But, a couple of things that we speak about quite a lot is that the income or the compensation doesn't always have to be in a monetary value.
That's right.
It can be also around other things such as...
It can be in buttered chicken or giving them bottles of Shiraz.
Or sneakers.
Exactly. That's how I'd like to be compensated.
Yes. I mean, I love the sneakers you're wearing today.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yes.
I brought them specially for you.
Yes. But, so first and foremost is, if I think about the breakdown, in terms of some of the members of what they're doing is we break down, even if I look at percentage, Tristan, 50% of someone's income could be based on what their actual base salary actually is. But that's interesting.
And this is some of the things we do, right? Like if someone's got like an OTE of X amount, let's just pull up 200K or something, right? 100K be base.
Correct. Okay. And then it's like, but what do we do with the other 50%?
Yeah.
Well,
we spend it on sneakers.
Yes. And Shiraz. And butter chicken.
Yes.
But the other 50%, sometimes I see the mistake being made is that it just gets allocated in incentives that are maybe too wrong. And it's sometimes even incentives around, just filling the room or filling the patient room, which is sometimes all wrong because that can also end up costing you money rather than making you money in the long run. But what I like is so 50% we spoke about is around the base. The other 50% can actually be broken into 2 parts. So you got 25% and 25%. And I think the first 25%...
For your listener, 50 divided by 2 is 25. That's where Dave got the advanced math.
Yes. 25 and 25, 50. Yeah. So 25% is actually based around unified growth goals.
Okay, great.
Which can be related to...
Like team goals?
Company goals.
Company
business
goals.
So, for example, that means that all team members can be related. So whether it's front of house staff, whether it's the practitioners,
yes,
whether it's the business manager.
So when the business hits X, then everyone gets the other 25%.
Correct. Related to their role. Obviously, you'll have people that
you know, that's very clever because it's creating a culture of everyone's like
unified approach.
What's collective mind.
Yeah, what's the one? So when you're speaking in your team meetings on a week-to-week basis, whether it even be the one-on-one, you're reminding people of that common goal that everybody wants to hit. Because if everybody hits it, everybody celebrates together. Everybody wins together. Now, that doesn't mean to say that the incentive or what 25% is for them is the same.
That's right.
But at least it's the same goal unpacked by obviously who contributes to that in a way. So obviously, front of house staff teams are obviously, because you want high performance there too. Well, they're obviously going to be contributing to that based on the patient experience and the retention and how people are made to be feel, whereas the practitioner in their hands is the one actually delivering. So they're all unified together in terms of...
Can I say, what I love about this is that, like, everyone's role is equally important because there's this company goal, but that isn't achieved unless everyone is doing their part. And that there is a real connectedness to that. And like there's a separate thing that we're working on here at Practice Acceleration. Like every team department knows our company goal. And so we talk about at the beginning of every meeting, we actually reference it. And then, but everyone's got a different way about how they're going about doing that. It creates this real like connectedness. You've articulated that so beautifully. So
the other 25%, well then, because we're going to speak about that, is the incentives of the individual KPIs or the individual incentives that
of the individual.
However, what's different here about nurturing high performance is high performance are really, really good at creating them or declaring them for themselves.
Declaring their own goals.
Correct.
Why is that? Why is that important?
Well, it's
like if I'm to set a goal for someone versus them setting a goal for themselves.
For me?
Yeah.
Well, first and foremost is that high performers are obviously looking at achieving more. They've just got, they don't really just want to hit the standard. They're always, I guess the unique DNA is they just want what's next. And also from that, it's interesting that when high performers, there's an element of social proof. So when they actually declare that or they find that the values are around being responsible and accountable to that.
Yes.
So what's interesting we do internally with our team is that everybody gets to declare their own goals.
That's right. And everyone's got different goals.
Yeah.
But even within the same departments.
There's also the social proof that comes with that, or the social, not pressure. Yeah, probably more so pressure that comes with that. That as an individual declares in front of the whole team, well, they've now got to go and back that up. So rather than me setting you a KPI in private, it's, hey, let's set an incentive around a KPI that you've set for yourself that aligns with the company. So it's not just about allowing you to set a KPI or set a goal that's not in alignment with that or below par, below standard. Everybody understands the standards that we have within the business, but it's also allowing someone to actually go, well, you know what? Here's the goal that I want to set for myself, and here's an alignment with the standards that the business has, and you know what? We're going to financially reward you for that. So therefore, it keeps it growing and growing and growing.
Yeah.
But it also allows that high performance to feel that they are contributing, that they are communicating, that they are shaping the future and obviously being involved. But also, before we segue to the next place, is they feel very, very connected to not only the group, but to the management, but also to the future of that business, which probably leads us to the next step.
And it brings us to number 3, that is connection. And connection is a byproduct of the first two, essentially, is that we're all connected. Like, there's like self-connection, which is like, if I'm declaring a goal, which I do, and I'm like, here's my goal, and I've chosen that because it's meaningful or whatnot, or I've seen through social proof that someone else can achieve that, therefore I've chosen that. It's meaningful to me, and then I get after it. So I'm connected to my own goal, but also I'm connected to your goals.
Yes. I'm
connected to your goals, which you're connected to on an individual basis, because then we've got the company goals, and we all share in the benefit of that, because there's, like you were saying in your instance, like 25% of our upside is connected to the company doing that.
Yes.
So we've got this real connection to that. And this is why it's so important. And, my sister is talking about that this week at our Vanguard intensive, is she's talking about the true cost of the bad apple.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important that you have the right cultural fit with people.
Yes.
Because you can see that you're all working so closely together and we know also that one person in a small team of 5 people can decrease performance by 20 to 30% overall.
Yes.
So, and that's why it can be so disruptive when you've got the wrong person in your team.
Yes.
And that's why it's so important that you've got that 90-day period to really flesh them out.
Yes.
And you've got to be really dedicated to maintaining the 3 Cs.
That's right. Well, it's even about staying connected to the true purpose of what it is that you hired the person for.
Yes.
It's staying connected to what is your actual default? And the default is about what matters most to you, what the priorities are, why we do what we do, why the direction we're going, and why that actually matters.
Yes.
So I think it's not only are we connected to each other and also connected to the fact that yourself and growing, I think it's about being connected to the common purpose that we're doing this in the first place.
Yes, absolutely.
And reminding not only ourselves, but being able to have a culture that reminds each other of why we do those things. And sometimes you and I will thrash on the decisions, and sometimes we'll get really creative at some point. But then at one point we sometimes go, wait a minute, this is great, but let's bring ourselves back.
Yeah, that's right. Why are we doing this?
Yes, why are we doing this, and for what purpose, and for what this matters, and is this going to bring us closer to that goal? Therefore, we stay connected to the future.
Yes.
Rather than being, I guess, connected to either the past that we can't control anymore, or connected to
stuck in over well.
Yeah, or even going off on a sidetrack, or going off on somewhere else that we don't want to go.
Exactly.
So I think being connected again to the future is a really important point. But these are the three that I think really make a big difference.
I absolutely love that. So I'm going to summarize those for our listeners today. To nurture an environment of high performance, the first one is culture.
Yes.
The second one is compensation, and the third one is connection to the first two. And if you're watching or you're listening and you want to start building out a process for this, I'm like a personal development junkie, and I don't want to say to you it's easy, because it's not. To really build a powerful business and a powerful culture, what does it take, Dave? A decision.
Yes.
Takes a decision.
It doesn't take time.
Doesn't take time. It'll take time if you don't make the decision to do it.
Yes.
Right? So one of my sayings, one of our mantras is, business is simple, but it's not easy. It's simple because the steps are actually logical and rational, but it's not easy because our emotive mind gets in the way. So if you're listening and you want to start making a shift, it's actually simple, but it's not easy. And when you lean into that simplicity, you're following the steps we've talked about, and we have a process for all this, then it actually becomes very easy, because you're moving along with it. But if you don't have the right process, it's very challenging. So we're going to wrap up this episode in a moment. What I want to say to everyone listening, if you haven't subscribed to our podcast, please do so. And if you know someone that you feel would benefit from listening to this, please share this to them.
Absolutely.
Because that way we can share our mission with more people. And Dave, I want to say this is one of my favorite topics.
Yeah, it's been really
How much fun has this been?
I've loved it. Thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. I'm going to see you in the next episode too.
Look forward.
I'm going to bring you back. I'm wear even more special sneakers.
Oh well.
Guys, thank you so much for listening. We appreciate you. We'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now. Ciao, ciao. Arrivederci. Buonasera.
See ya.